It's going to be a dad joke off.
All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Sunday, Easter Sunday. I'm joined by Eric Linsquist. We have Team Eric here as we get ready to bring you in a two-game NBA featured slate here. Mr. Linsquist, what's going on? It's been a hot minute since we've done some shows together.
I miss you. That's really what it comes down to. Good to be hanging out with my old pal. You look beautiful. You look well. I think. I mean, it's pretty white, like a white blank canvas behind you there. So you're working remote. I'm working remote, but we're getting the thing done because there's money to be won. That was a rhyme.
All right. Well, we'll have to have the rhyme game going today. We'll have to have the dad jokes. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about some chalk. We're going to talk about ducks. We're going to have a good time here. We're going to talk about your future president. Could be me. Could be The Rock. We'll find out. But we do have a little bit of injury information, or not necessarily injury information, but availability here. We have two games going on our later slate. We are brought to you today by Underdog Sports. So we'll talk about some of their player props that they have. Not only do they have player prop contests, they also have normal GPP type tournaments, and they have drafts. So they've got all sorts of contests going on for you. The main ones we'll look at tonight, though, will be those prop-based contests. But give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's have some fun here as we dive on in. I'm sure we'll have quite a few people joining us here shortly. The key things to set up here for the first game, that will be Chicago at Milwaukee. We've got Milwaukee favored by about 9 points. Sometimes it ticks up to 9.5, depending on where you're looking. No George Hill for Milwaukee. No Jordan Nwora for Milwaukee. They are out with various injuries. Of course, we figured the bench would be somewhat shortened, but those guys are actually viable players here. So those minutes could be condensed elsewhere. And that's something that we want to look at, because even though we went through 3 days worth of play-in tournaments, and yesterday we had the first games of the first round, people are still not realizing that the benches are shortened, and they're getting mad about DNPs. I'm seeing this on some Twitter. I'm seeing this in the chat rooms. Eric, you mentioned you got a little information here for us on the Nwora/Hill take. What do you got for us? Let's start off with something a little spicy.
Oh, well, I think Wesley Matthews is probably going to be my favorite tournament play at the 3K range. This is a ridiculous feeling, but I think what happens is you talk about it being condensed and looking at rotations from 2-3 weeks ago. I just see Wesley Matthews playing a lot more minutes than otherwise maybe would have, with George Hill being there. You play Drew Holiday at the point. You're really going to have Javon Carter maybe play some minutes, but Grayson Allen, Giannis, Chris Middleton, lots of guys who can still handle the ball. Pat Connaughton coming off the bench. But I think what happens is Pat Connaughton, he was not really standing out as a guy that I wanted to get to a whole heck of a lot of. And I think he's pretty darn popular on this slate. I think the random pivot to get to is probably a little bit more Wesley Matthews. He's 3K, and there's a lot of really good mid-range plays. All these top tier guys, whether it's CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, even Devin Booker at his current price, and for sure Chris Paul and Jonas Valanciunas, they're just underpriced for where they are. But that made Giannis come in a little bit lower owned, around 35% on a 2-game slate. I think the after effect of Nwora being out and getting George Hill officially ruled out is that Wesley Matthews has some utility at 3K. Is he an interesting fantasy option? He's a 0.5 fantasy point per minute guy. No, but he's 3K, and it's so hard to find guys like that in the playoffs on a 2-gamer.
Yeah, and this is going to be kind of fun. I did the earlier slate today. I'm not playing this 2-gamer. I have done showdowns for both. I was worried about internet here, so no fantasy cruncher, no crunches being run, none of that other stuff in the background. I already know that the sound quality here was going to be tricky enough. We didn't need.
So we're going to get the most attentive EMac in the history of shows ever, is what we're looking. Jordan Klein is like, yes, we are.
I will find something to distract myself, but I will say of my 12, I did 12, and I don't know why I did 12 instead of 10 or 15 or 20, but I did 12 showdown lineups here on DK. I'm going to run Giannis in all of them. I have him captain in 2. I have him in the utility spot in 10, but I did end up with a healthy amount here of Wesley Matthews. He's on about half of my lineups. Looking at the DK showdown, he is 1,200. So even if he plays a relatively empty 20 minutes, I'm okay with that. He'll be on the court. Could he luck into a 3 or 2? Perhaps a rebound bounces his way. Maybe an errant pass he gets credit for a steal. We're just looking for a handful of fantasy points at 1,200, but he's going to be out there on the court. So he's someone I was surprised that he was coming up into my lineups until I realized, oh, okay, that makes sense. If Hill and Noir aren't each going to get like 10 to 12 minutes as we consolidate things down, that just is another chance that we do see Wesley Matthews in the lineup a little longer than expected.
Yeah, I mean, he was projected for just 22 minutes. I'm going to project him closer to 25, 26. I mean, we're going to see, because of Brook Lopez's existence, like we've seen for the last month and a half, 2 months, we've seen a very condensed spot where Serge Ibaka doesn't really play, and you don't really see a lot of Javon Carter, probably zero Javon Carter here in this spot. But more than likely, you're seeing like a 9-man rotation here from Milwaukee tops. I think most of those minutes, Wesley Matthews has the ability to play at the 2, at the 3, and kind of him and Pat Connaughton on the floor. Wesley Matthews has been out there for defensive purposes, which is kind of a random thing. I was going back and forth with this guy on Twitter a couple of weeks ago where he was talking about, oh, did you see Wesley Matthews' defense on Kevin Durant? No, I didn't see that, but I know that he's a veteran that a lot of people like in the NBA. Seems like a guy that doesn't need the ball ever. That's why you see a sub 0.5 fantasy point per minute rate. But just like we saw with PJ Tucker in the early session, you get some of these cheapies. You got to be willing to roll the dice because of what else they get you. And for me, it's really hard to get to Giannis in a lot of capacities without Wesley Matthews.
Yeah, and that's something that's going to be, I'm just looking to see. I don't think we have the actual starting lineup here yet for Milwaukee, but are you still assuming that Matthews does end up in the starting lineup?
Yeah, I am right now. I mean, if you weren't, that would be a different situation. But we've seen for however long. I mean, it's for the last 4 games.
Half dozen or so games.
Grayson Allen's been coming off the bench. Wesley Matthews has started every game since March 29th. I think it just has to be one of those guys. And once he's announced starting, I think people start going towards him maybe a little bit more if they just aren't paying attention and this shows up. But I mean, he's coming in projected around 21%. Is he going to be serviceable here? I mean, he takes up a lineup spot, but again, I find it hard for me to land on a ton of Giannis the way that I would want to on any site. Now, if you're playing the 4-game slate, I don't really know how much Wesley Matthews I want to get to because there's just so many pieces of value that have already occurred, players that have already done really, really well in the early session. We'll talk Alex Caruso. We'll talk Herbert Jones, all the wings from Phoenix, a lot of other pieces of value, but because of the $1,000 that Wesley Matthews can spend you, that's kind of the guy that I wanted to start talking about first. Welcome to the 2-game slate we have before us.
Yes, and this is the start of the series are the best opportunity that we have to find those little bits of edge that are still there because as I mentioned towards the top of the show, people still, regardless of how many years we've had showdown slates, they still forget every single year that the playoff rotations get tightened, that some of their favorite value guys aren't even going to make it off the bench at this point. And that's something that's important. Now, when they do show up is if there's going to be a lopsided game on one side or the other. And as we saw last night, Van Vliet fouled out, but we saw Jokic get pulled with 5 minutes to go. Mm-hmm. And I think guessing Trae Young did earlier today as well. So it's one of those where that's when you start to see, the Timothy Luval-Cabarros end up in the lineup or players such as that. But if those things don't come to pass, they're not going to they may not leave the bench or they may be, get that ceremonial minute or two at the end of one of the halves. So it's something to always be careful with. The other thing that's going to bring some interesting maneuvering, it won't impact us today, but as that Toronto series continues back and forth when they see whatever happens there with Matisse Thybulle and how they're going to replace that. But these are just the little spots that we're looking for.
Danny Green season, baby.
Yeah, boy.
It's going to be a lot more minutes for the starters. I think they can navigate that. It's not as good of a defender as he is. The one thing you can replace is that, like, offensively, they're going to be better for him off the floor either way.
Most definitely. All right. So the other stuff that we're looking at here, just if we look at Giannis, if you're focusing on the 2-game slate, the interesting thing is, do you go with Giannis or do you not? And that's our decision point. And I think, in my opinion, the way this slate is shaping up, I don't think you have to, even from that raw points perspective. He's projected for about 18 to 20 more fantasy points than most everybody else in our player pool, though we have at least 9 other players that have a better than 50-50 chance of reaching 40 fantasy points or higher themselves. That makes this interesting. You could get 3 of those with no Giannis. With Giannis, you can kind of get 2 of them. This is a big difference maker, and it's something that I think is unique to this particular slate today, because we've got the trio in, with Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton. You've got DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Nikola Vucevic in this game. You've got CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram and Jonas Valanciunas, and even though they're going in a tougher matchup there against Phoenix, we know that all the production is going to be consolidated with that trio. And then you have the direct pivot off of Giannis with Chris Middleton or with Drew Holiday. So yes, Giannis projected with the best median outcome of anybody here, but there are a plethora of options that could come together and catch him, which I think that makes it interesting in tournaments. In the earlier slate today, I only had 30% Giannis in the 4-game slate, I only had 30% Giannis across the contest. I think that was a little bit above where the average was, but if I was playing tonight, I would probably come in below on those 2-game slates. And again, I'm doing Showdown for both. I'm just not doing this 2-game slate so my computer doesn't die on us in the middle of the show. But I would come in below wherever Giannis is, and I'd try to maneuver around the rest of the field by getting 3 of those other 9 guys in the lineup here. What is your thought on that Giannis take there?
Yeah, I said I think because of the mid-range, I went through it, and on this 4-game slate, I found it still hard to get to Giannis the way that I wanted to. There's so many underpriced players on both sides. Going through the FanDuel slate for a 2-gamer, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, 99K, 8,600. That's cheaper than when you're going to put them in for 35, 36 minutes now going forward. It's going to be hard for me to imagine that that's fair. They're just underpriced still for their relationship to this basketball team. It just makes a lot of sense to get to them. DeMar DeRozan, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, the next tier of guys. I mean, all 8,400 to 8K, and on DK even cheaper. It's just misprices all over the place in the mid-range. And so the cost of playing Giannis is you're missing out on a number of these guys. You basically have to omit one, but now with Wes, I'm feeling a little bit better about getting to it on the 2-game slate, whereas on the full slate beforehand, I just don't have enough roster spots to really navigate and get onto any Wes or make Giannis a more of a meaningful part of my lineup. So my game plan for this 2-gamer is to get to a little bit more Giannis than is listed, 35%. I'm willing to go above that. And on FanDuel, he's at 54%. I'm going to end up right around that. But I was expecting coming into this slate this morning to have a lot, and it just didn't happen until about an hour ago.
All right. Don't worry. I see we've got Michael McKinney here. He's going to be asking for a super chat. Let me tee you up with this so you can ponder it while I take care of some business. But he's looking for his usual 2 pay-up plays and 3 for value. FanDuel Cash is what he's looking for.
FanDuel Cash.
FanDuel Cash. But I do want to remind everybody that you guys can get all of the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo weekly pass. That's just $29.95. This includes access to all of the premium content and tools on Awesemo, which means that you get the player projections, the ownership projections, the boom bust tool, the lineup builder, the top for NBA, of course. Then you get top stacks for MLB. You get top stacks or top lines for NHL. You get all the good stuff here. This is just $29.95 per week, or you want to get into the NBA only for as low as $4.95 weekly. You can get the Express package. This is something that is a lot of fun. You get access to the player rankings, the ownership rankings, the lineup builder, and a few other tools here, as well as any Showdown content that we are putting forth, which is helpful. Usually what that means is in these first rounds of the playoffs, the night games are the ones that have the largest contests. We do have a size limit before we'll start breaking out the Showdown contests. But once we get down to 2 games a day, we'll be doing Showdown contests for both. But in the meantime, you do get that aspect of Awesemo as well, coming in at a pretty good deal here. All right, so teeing you back up, Michael McKinney super chat, 2 must-play payups and 3 values. Looking for FanDuel Cash.
Yeah, for FanDuel Cash, it's weird to say, but the first guy in is probably Alex Caruso. I think you just are playing him at 4,200 on FanDuel. That's your first piece of value. Second piece of value, I think Chris Middleton, 7,100. That's impossible not to play. 32.1% optimal percentage in terms of the full 4-game slate over on FanDuel. So if I'm playing cash on a 2-gamer, Chris Middleton is absolutely a smash. I think center kind of depends on how much money you have left over and what kind of build you're going to land on. I think Vooch at 6,900 is probably the best point per dollar one and probably affords you to get up to Giannis more. I think because it's a 2-game slate, I have to try to find paths to Giannis just because he's projected for 60 fantasy points. And in cash, I find it hard to believe that I wouldn't do everything I could to try to get up to him because he could just be the make or break piece the entire slate. But as it stands now, CJ McCollum just way underpriced at 8K as well. So I'll say my 2 studs, find a way to Giannis, play McCollum, and then value Alex Caruso. Chris Middleton, I consider value at 7,100. And Jay Crowder, he's 4,400. Impossible that you're not going to play him on DK, FanDuel, whatever cash you're playing. Jay Crowder is probably in that lineup.
Yeah, Crowder was someone that I had to finally tamp down because I was running a 70% player cap on that 4-game main slate, and he was coming in at 70%. I ended up landing on about 60%, but I decided in looking all of that he was going to be my favorite value. He could just do so many things. You know, he can be the 3-and-D guy. He can at least facilitate, non-traditional facilitator, or at least make those hockey passes, et cetera. He's someone that's no stranger to the playoffs at all. That's the kind of guy that all of a sudden gets an uptick when the lineups get short or when the rotations get shortened. And, you know, he lands with 5 extra minutes that aren't going to, you know, whomever is not leaving the bench. And you're just like, oh, I never saw that coming. How did he get 28 minutes? Well, he could do a whole bunch of things. He could do them well, and he's got the veteran savvy, and we're only going to play every other day or every day, you know, every 2 days. And that's the time where you see some of these veterans start to shine in the postseason. So that's one way
to expand on that. I mean, it's pretty easy to see how those minutes go more to Jay Crowder. They come from Torrey Craig. Like Torrey Craig is not going to play nearly as much in a playoff scenario as what he played during the regular season. And so the reason that he's popping in so many projection models, why he's projected for 49% rostership on this 2-game slate on FanDuel, it just comes down to it's very easy to project him for 30 minutes. He's now played in back-to-back finals appearances with the Miami Heat and with the Suns last year. And he's just such an important part of any kind of a playoff rotation. He fits the mold of a PJ Tucker or, you know, all these guys that are so synonymous with good playoff basketball, why guys want them on your team. So Jay Crowder, I doubt Torrey Craig sees much of anything, maybe like one rotation in the second quarter or third quarter. But I find Jay Crowder to be a guy that's just unavoidable as a piece of no matter what you're doing, tournaments, cash, no matter what.
All right, let's, speaking of tournaments and cash, let's go to secret option C. That's over there on Underdog. Let's look at thus far, my favorite Underdog. We're doing overs and unders here. So we've got a variety of ways where you guys can get that information, especially on your budget. It's called free. If you go over to Odds Shopper, we talk about that all the time. That's the Awesemo sister site. It is going to have most of these, or at least the most popular player props up. That's feeding in the answers or our projected line coming in straight out of the DFS model here at Awesemo. That, of course, is maintained by Sean Zahn, by Steve the Colt Buzzard, and by Alex Baker. But you're getting that information. You can utilize that across the various sites that have player props, including sports books, but it works just fine for Underdog here. So the one I like the best that I've looked at so far on Underdog is Nikola Vucevic, and I'm going to say his name wrong every time I say it. I'm going to find a more unique way of saying it each and every time. But the points plus rebounds. He has 26.5. Now you want to be careful here as you bounce around all the different sites. You got to be careful. Is it points, rebounds plus assists? Is it a combination of these things? Some of the sites have fantasy sports, etc. The one thing you can do on Prize Picks is when you log into Prize Picks, you go up in the upper left. They have their column called header called Pick'em. Within there, you get a search bar. If you search on something like assists, it'll bring up all of the assist options. If you in the search bar put up the player you're looking for, it will bring up all of the player props that they have. So on Vucevic, he has points plus rebounds at 26.5. Awesemo has him for about 2.5 more than that. That's something I like in this matchup going against Brooke Lopez and Bobby Revenge and Portis going as the post players here. We know Vucevic is going to be taking some threes. He's going to be the secondary passer, and he's a good rebounder. And that is something I think that it would be a shock if he's not dancing towards a 20-10 night. And that's what we're going to need to beat this. And that's something I think we can see. Your thoughts on that particular pick there?
Yeah, no, I love the Vooch prop. I love over on rebounds there. Alex Caruso, I've gone back and forth a number of times figuring out what I want to do with him. I'll add Alex Caruso. I'm in the great state of Arizona, so I have the opportunity to sports bet, whereas I don't when I'm actually home in California. So Alex Caruso over 1.5 steals plus 135 at a book I'm looking at. We have him projected north at 1.9. Anytime you get a 58% expected win percentage and you see plus 135, that's an auto bet. Like it's just an auto bet. Not sure if that's going to be available on Prize Picks, but Alex Caruso, I've gone back and forth quite a bit on what I wanted to do with him on this 4-game slate and then again on this 2-game slate. I think I'm going to embrace a lot of his upside just by taking the over on that prop and be a little bit lower on this 4-game slate.
All right. I see Randy in chat make sure I'm not frozen there. Jordan's. I see Randy in chat mentioning Lopez took Vucevic to school last time they played 28
Oh, my
points.
God.
Let's not worry about that, but let's consider Brook Lopez here as we kind of wrap up this first game. So he got hurt, what was it, the first or second game of the season, didn't come back until mid-March. He's worked his way back into low 20s for minutes. I think he's someone that we can consider. I do like him on Yahoo. He was $13 there. He ended up in my main lineup on the 4-game slate for Yahoo. He's someone I think is interesting, but let's remember Vooch coming off, or Lopez coming off injury. He's 34. Let's put this in perspective. His grandfather was my mom's driver's ed teacher in high school.
What?
Yes. The Lopez brothers' mom was a few years younger than mine. So
oh my gosh.
Their grandfather or her dad was the driver's ed teacher at the small high school they went to.
That's pretty fantastic. Jordan Klein just disappeared into the abyss. He doesn't know what to do with himself right now. That's
one of those trivia things I'm not going to be able to bring up much longer because they have been, those guys have been in the league, 13, 14 years now.
For a hot second. Robin Lopez playing cleanup duty for the Magic. What a time to be alive. But yeah, Brook Lopez, he's not standing out that much in terms of the boom bust tool. Looking at 4,600 for him on DK has some utility. He can knock down threes from the outside. Vooch isn't probably going to be out there guarding him so much. I think if they want to, they can put Brook on the perimeter and he can maybe knock down some shots. But I see a 12.27 boom percentage. It's a 2-game slate. So any starter, anybody playing meaningful minutes, which come playoff time, Brook Lopez is very important to their defensive scheme. So I think it's all right to land on, but he's definitely not intriguing at that number. And then on FanDuel, I found it impossible to get to him on the 4-game slate. 5,300 for him there. When you get somebody like Vooch at 6,900, when you get Jonas Valanciunas at 8 and underpriced 7,600 and 7,400 respectively, Brook Lopez is kind of a casualty of the position. Pretty easy to play a lot of these power forward / center guys over there as well and get some savings. So I really didn't land on Brook at all, but on DK, I think it has some utility. Yahoo, you don't get a 3-point bonus over there, do you?
You get it's the same scoring as FanDuel. So I think you get
yes. Okay. Got it. Well,
and it's 3 points for blocks and assists there. So
so that's nice for Brook Lopez. Again, defensively, that's always been his calling card. That and being able to knock down an open 3, and when in his time with the Nets and his time with the Lakers, that was always something he had in his repertoire, and we saw it come playoff time last year. So Brook Lopez, if you land on him on DK or Yahoo, I'd be okay with that. But FanDuel, definitely not going to be in the pool for me.
All right. I think we hit on everybody of note here. Anything you want to call out specifically for Jrue Holiday or Chris Middleton?
For Jrue Holiday or Chris Middleton, I prefer Jrue Holiday on DK 7,900. Yeah, there's a lot of guards we want to play. There's a lot of guys we want to land on there. 8,100 for Chris Middleton, but I'm punting a lot. I think a lot of our value exists at small forward, power forward on this slate. And so Chris Middleton, sure, I could imagine why you would land there, but Jrue Holiday, I have him projected for more points straight up than Chris Middleton, and that just gives me more of an opportunity to land on Jrue on a slate where I just got to be really concerned about just getting the most fantasy points possible, which sounds redundant because that's kind of the goal every day. But positionality matters. And I think because of how much I'm getting to the G Crowders, the Wesley Matthews of the world, harder for me to land on a Chris Middleton today.
And then a couple guys here sort on the back end of the rotation here for Chicago that I wanted to touch on. I saw somebody mention in chat, Tristan Thompson. Right now, we're projecting him for about 12 minutes. He's sort of likely to get the minutes that Vucevic is not going to play. There's no guarantee he gets them. They could go small. They could do a variety of other things depending on if it's Bobby Portis in when that happens, or if it's going to be Lopez. Kobe White, we have for 20 minutes. Ayo Dosunmu, we have for 25. Alex Caruso, we have for 31. Caruso, of course, coming back from injury. Coaches said they're going to monitor his minutes. They figure he's going to play around 30. Would be the ideal situation. But if he gets in foul trouble or looks a little sore or just not quite having it, wouldn't be surprised if he dipped down to 26 minutes. And then the semi-surprise, not really a surprise because he's been playing minutes, but Patrick Williams, he's going to get minutes. He's a decent defender. They're going to need that. He's not an exciting fantasy option, except when he is not playing fifth wheel to the other four guys on the floor, which only happens late in the season or late in games. Can you go to any of these Bulls understudies here?
Bulls understudies, not the big three. I think the most intriguing by far is Alex Caruso. I find it impossible on FanDuel to not have some exposure there, 4,200. I was going to full fade him earlier because on the 4-gamer, I thought he was going to get so much attention. But the more I look at it, the reason that he's getting so much attention is minute certainty. He should for sure be playing 30-plus minutes back with his time with the Lakers into now. I mean, he's just an excellent defender, a guy who's going to be on the floor quite a bit. I'm still going to be lower on the 4-game slate. The 2-game slate, I find him impossible not to have a ton of maybe 100% type play for a site like FanDuel. Over on TK2, exact same number, 4,200. You don't get those extra points for steals. I already talked about the prop that I liked. The over on 1.5 steals here for Alex Caruso with plus money attached to it. That looks really nice. They're 10-point dogs. And, this game can get wonky. And I think that's where you start to get the conversation about Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, who could really play cleanup duty. But I think it's really, really messy to try to play the who gets blowout run type game in the playoffs, because everybody's going out trying to win every single night. It would have to get really lopsided. We're talking 25 points, with 6 minutes left in order to really get the excellent amount of run you're looking for there. But the guys who get it are just not good fantasy producers here on this team. Ayo, as much as he's had upside before, he's a 0.71 fantasy point per minute guy. Kobe White, 0.82, a little bit better, more of the hot hand approach, probably a guy that I'd be more willing to take shots on in tournaments, but I'm not making enough lineups to really land on either one of those guys. So take that for what you will. Tristan Thompson is just he would be a luck box type. Vooch gets in foul trouble early. Brook Lopez is on the floor and he's 3,200 and gives you all the savings. He fits that mold of like a Wes Matthews, but the thing that makes Wes Matthews make more sense to me is I know he'll be starting. I know he'll be playing 20+ minutes. We have no idea what it looks like for Tristan Thompson. And even if he gets them, he's only a 0.92 fantasy point per minute producer. That's not great amongst centers. So I think I'd be more willing to use my center spot on guys with actual upside, and I'll punt at that small forward, power forward position again.
All right. Reminder as we transition to our second game today, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. They have plenty of contests for the NBA playoffs. Today, we're going to focus on their pick'ems for the final 2 games of the night. They, of course, have drafts. They did a nice little playoff best ball draft. They've got very innovative stuff over there. Definitely worth checking out. If you haven't signed up over there, use the promo code Awesemo. They will double your first deposit up to $100. Yes, that's correct. You put in 100, use the promo code Awesemo. They will add 100 to your account. That money will come out first into the different contests that you are playing, but they have all sorts of offerings from best ball to same day contests to same day drafts and to pick'ems. Great place to play over there, both for the playoffs, which are a lot of fun to do same day drafts, as well as coming up football. Are we that close? We can start talking about football, right? It never ends.
We can always talk about football. The
point, right?
NFL draft kind of coming up here soon. That's pretty important in the world. Also, EMac, I feel like, did you dabble in any USFL?
I remember USFL the first time around 40 years ago. I did not play yesterday.
Yeah,
I understand there was a bit of a kerfuffle there on DraftKings, but I did not play. But we do have USFL projections. You guys definitely want to check that out. Assuming they, we would. In the event the league goes under, we'll prorate back whatever you pay for season-long USFL.
That's
package.
Nice of us to do. That's good.
On air meeting. I'm assuming we would do the right thing, absolutely, because it's Alex Awesemo Baker, and he is the most upstanding gentleman in the DFS world. But no, I did not dabble yesterday, but I was playing all of the other sports. And tonight we've got Bristol on the dirt. They're bringing in the dirt to put on top of the track. So we got all sorts of stuff behind. Or that I've been doing this weekend instead of spending time with family on Easter. That's kind of a jerk move on my part, but that's okay. They're rewarding me with fillets this afternoon. Barbecue fillets. Excellent.
Let's do it.
Looking forward to it. On to our second of the two games here. We have the New Orleans Pelicans going into Phoenix. We know that Landry Shamet is questionable. Aside from that, everybody should be good to go. Phoenix favored by 10.5 here. We do know that most of the production is going to be consolidated there with the big threes on both teams. The player that makes me the most nervous is DeAndre Ayton. And why is that? Well, it's so hard. He never looks for his shot, Eric. Rarely does he get he kind of tops out around double digits. If I knew he was going to get 12 field goal attempts, he would be an outstanding play today. He's a walking double-double. He's going to get the blocks. He's going to get the rebounds, but he never looks for a shot. So you're counting on putback dunks, him filling the lane, an alley-oop or two from Booker or Paul. But it's so hard when it's unlikely he's going to get 20 NBA points in this game for him to be a real difference maker, except for those random games where he goes for 50 fantasy points, seemingly out of nowhere, when he gets 15 shots and makes 11 of them. What do you want to do with Ayton here?
I think Ayton gets a bad rap in this regard, because if you just look at it from a fantasy point perspective, he's a guy that actually performs pretty darn well. Now, he's not JaVale McGee in terms of rates this season, but over the course of this entire season, 1,712 minutes Ayton's been on the floor, 1.16 DraftKings points per minute. Chris Paul, obviously 1.22. Devin Booker, 1.26. JaVale McGee, 1.3. So in terms of just fantasy point per minute, he's only 0.06 away from Chris Paul. Just that's under all circumstances. So DeAndre Ayton, maybe it's just that we have Jokic and Embiid on all center slates over the course of the regular season, or even on some of these playoff slates, we will have them going forward. But I think it goes a little bit underappreciated how good of a fantasy producer he can be. The other nice thing is that DeAndre Ayton, as good as JaVale McGee can be in terms of that backup minutes, you're really not going to see as much of him here in games that they need to go out and win. And I think the usage rate is maybe a little bit better than you think it is. 22.2%, I believe, over the course of the season. 22.1% is the exact number for DeAndre Ayton on the season. So, he's not going out there with a 30% usage rate like we've got for Devin Booker. But that's actually a higher usage rate than Chris Paul even. And the guy who's going to be setting him up a lot, Chris Paul. So I feel a little bit better rostering a lot of a lot of Ayton than you do.
All right. I see as the Brooklyn-Boston game is winding down, one Kyrie Irving is taking it to his former team there, 39 points.
Yeah, and now I have 0% on the FanDuel slate. I made 40 lineups over there, and I'm going through here. He's at 69, so we need to make some pivots here. Nice 6 stock game from Kyrie Irving for the FanDuel slate. I had pretty much 3 Boston Celtics in every lineup. That's actually going to work out nicely for me, but 0% Kyrie Irving is not.
Does it still count that Chris Paul was drafted by a franchise in New Orleans?
No.
No.
Why would that count? Why are we counting that for him?
Well, because it's the revenge. Because technically that wasn't it the
no, they tried to trade him to the Lakers, and David Stern said, no, you can't do it. And he basically said they blocked the trade, and that's how he ended up on the Clippers instead.
Yeah, but he played in New Orleans for 6 seasons.
He did.
Forget that a long time ago. Chris Paul's been around for a while there.
He is very good at the game of basketball.
Do you think he leads his squad back to the Western Conference Finals?
See, I've had all of these ideas in my head where I thought, oh, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray are going to get back. Well, doesn't look like that's going to happen. Looks like a pretty clear path now for Utah. Just they drew the injury bug Yahtzee in terms of having Luka out. Lots of really fortunate happenstances to really land on Phoenix. I think they're the odds-on favorite. They are the odds-on favorite. Do I believe in this basketball team to win a finals? Probably not. I think whoever gets out of the East is going to be a juggernaut and is going to be favored over them. But I got to be thinking Phoenix is the most live in the West. Is there anybody you think is remotely close to them?
Golden State, but they need everybody healthy.
Yep.
And they need Draymond putting up, fringe triple doubles every game.
How great would it be if we got Zion?
9-9s. Yeah.
How great would it be if we got like 18, 20 minutes of Zion in like a week? That would be fun, but I don't think we're going to get it. It's brutal.
I don't. Same thing where I don't think Porter Jr. or Murray are going to be able to be, if they make it back, are going to be able to do much of a difference maker for.
Oh my God. Denver. Celtics won. No
Celtics
way.
ended up winning. Yeah. Tatum put one in basically at the buzzer.
Wow. Wow, dude. Wow. Kobe White. One of the greatest draft day quotes ever. Do you remember that?
I do not.
Wow, bro. It's the best. You got to look it up.
Now I'm going to definitely.
Kobe White YouTube. Something tells me, EMac, you can multitask. You could probably pull that one up on the sidebar. I said you were looking for something to distract you. Why not Kobe White on draft day?
No, I'd rather let it be our best bets Discord here over at Awesemo.
Oh, my dear
something
God.
That you can check out here. I have enjoyed having a sports wagering when I'm back home in the great state of Virginia. We've had that for just over a year now. It's a lot of fun. Fortunately, we have OddsShopper to help me out. And what makes it even better is the Awesemo Discord channel where Ben, Rasa, Alex Baker, Steve the Colts Buzzard, they're putting in bets every day across a multitude of sports. Ben Rasa, absolute literal genius. He is now putting hockey bets out there because I guess that's the next most obscure sport he can turn to once college athletics are done for the time being.
I would listen to him about all things. I
tail his bets, but they're dropping those bets in there for us to have. They're also tracking them, and the ROI return has been definitely a positive one. So that has been a lot of fun there. Of course, we have a lot of other Awesemo betting tools that are behind the paywall, as well as a couple that are in front of the paywall. And we're working on putting out some more beta tools as well that will ultimately become part of that premium package. But every day they're Steve and Ben and Alex are identifying the best bets that are available in NBA, MLB, NHL, and more. They're very confident in these bets. We also have the Awesemo Best Bets Twitter account. It's Awesemo Bets. There will be one free bet every day coming out from that account. This is definitely something you want to look at. While we don't think DFS is going to go away, as more and more sites come online or states come online with sports wagering, we think we're going to see some hybrid games that cross over, similar to what we've seen on Underdog and some of the other sports DFS sites maneuvering their way towards sports wagering. So it's going to be a kind of a mishmash of things. Get in front of this. Get there while the getting's good. It's definitely a lot of fun doing the sports wagering. All right, we'll go over Phoenix here since we kind of hit on them a little bit. Just looking at our minutes here. So. Booker, Ayton, Paul, obviously the big three. We know Mikal Bridges is going to play a ton of minutes guarding Ingram or CJ McCollum or whomever has the hot hand. How do you feel about him as a fantasy option? We've seen it all too often. He just sort of disappears and is like, hey, I've got all these other offensive players. I'm our best defender. I'm going to be focusing on that tonight. That's what we need us to do. Can you trust him from a fantasy perspective?
I think you can, because how many minutes do you project him for?
Well, I would go with the 37.2 that Awesemo did on the most recent refresh.
There you go.
That's just me. I don't have these fancy models like you do, because I use the one that Steve and Alex and Awesemo.
Literally looking at the one that Steve and Awesemo do because they're the best at it. And so I want to learn from the best. I project Mikal Bridges for around 38 minutes, and that makes him kind of a can't miss type play on this slate. You're seeing him with 44.7% ownership. This isn't a spot to get cute. Him, Jay Crowder. There's a reason that I feel pretty comfortable that they're just the best pieces of value on the slate. it's the certainty of minutes, and there's really nobody who's going to push them 4 minutes behind them. We're going to see some wonky stuff from time to time from a team like New Orleans. We're going to see some stuff from Chicago trying to match up with Milwaukee. But I feel like Phoenix, it's very clear cut. You're going to get a lot of Jay Crowder. You're going to get a lot of Mikal Bridges. And then Cameron Johnson's going to come in and be along for the ride. He's just basically there to 3-and-D himself, but just does it to a lesser extent than those two. Not as good of a defender by any means, but I look at Mikal Bridges as pretty impossible on both DK and FanDuel not to have a lot of shares of if you're playing more than a couple lineups.
If we look to the other wings, we've talked a little bit about Jay Crowder. How are you feeling about Cameron Johnson? He sort of really stood out in the playoffs the last couple, or very serious, the last couple seasons when Phoenix was running a little thin. Looks like he'll probably be the odd man out down to maybe 20 to 25 minutes, somewhere in that range. If he gets on a hot shooting streak, of course, he'll get a little more action, probably at the expense of someone like Shamet or Craig, or even potentially Crowder, depending on what's going on with that one. Is he someone you would be interested in at all tonight?
So 2-game slate, he's 2% owned. He's going to see the floor. That makes it, if you're making 150, viable to get to just about anybody getting shares of those guys. Otherwise, you're just looking at overlapping the most popular plays on the slate. And if somebody like Cameron Johnson comes to fruition, you're missing out on a massive piece there. But on FanDuel is probably where I'm going to have a little bit more interest. 7.9% optimal percentage. He's coming in only around 4% owned over there. So I think just because of the opportunity for anybody to spike a game where they get some more stocks, that has a little bit more utility. He's only 5.3% optimal over on DK, so a little bit less optimal. Now his ownership's at like 1% or 2%, but even still at 5K, harder for me to land on somebody like that. So I think at 4,700 on the FanDuel slate, I'm going to land on a couple shares of him, but nothing to get carried away with.
All right, and then the last guy we'll talk about for Phoenix here, we got about 18 minutes till tip off, so plenty of time to go over the Pelicans. We could talk a little showdown strategy, and we'll definitely get on some underdog picks as well. Cameron Payne looks like we've got him in for just 12 minutes. We know that Chris Paul, that Devin Booker are going to be playing a healthy share. He's probably kind of going to get his minutes by backing up both of them. Even if Landry Shamet is out, that's really not going to make that much of a difference for Payne. Do you see many scenarios tonight where he's getting into the 15, 16, 17-minute range?
Yeah, it would take.
I think he's someone people will go to and be shocked when he plays less than that tonight.
Yeah, we saw last year, Cameron Payne, I feel like, was my guy come playoff time last year. There were just some games where after Chris Paul got hurt, it made sense to go really, really crazy and overinvest. The first game against the Clippers, he played 29 minutes. He played really, really well there, 32.25 fantasy points. The next game basically said Chris Paul's hurt. You shouldn't play Chris Paul. You should play all the Cameron Payne. He was like 5%. He played 37 minutes, put up 53 fantasy points. So that's the kind of stuff he's capable of if he gets minutes. I just don't see the path for it here. He's only a 1 point. Well, he's a great fantasy point producer when he's on the floor, 1.1, but I just don't see a path for him to get any time. It's going to be Chris Paul. He needs to win one of these ships getting down to the wire of his career. And then Devin Booker, he's going to be out on the floor for as many minutes as he can handle. Also, against New Orleans, I mean, if it's not Devontae Graham out there playing some random minutes or Jose Alvarado, I don't really see who's going to be guarding on the other side. And come this time of year, that's where you see these guys who really can't play both sides of the ball. They get limited. And so I see Cameron Payne getting on the floor. I see him playing around 10 minutes, 12 minutes, nothing really to consider for this slate, I don't think. But, if something happens to either Devin Booker or Chris Paul, you're getting a really good 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. So I think there's a greater than 1 out of 100 chance that one of them gets hurt, especially Chris Paul with his injury history. So I don't completely hate if you're making 150 having shares of Cameron Payne. I would just be sure to not have Chris Paul in those lineups.
Good call out on that one, trying to find the maximum edge. Let's maneuver on over here to New Orleans. Now, you had a moment here with a couple weeks back, a month and a half ago, with Trey Murphy III.
Did.
We also have Larry Nance Jr., who had a resurgent game and reminded everybody that, hey, I was hurt. I really was hurt during part of the CJ McCollum heart trade that went in. His dad His dad was drafted by Phoenix. He spent the first half of his career there. Who remembers that?
Did his dad drive the bus for Brooke Lopez?
No, but his dad did dunk 2 basketballs at the same time in a dunk contest.
Oh, okay, that's close. That's kind of
cool. That's pretty impressive. Last person who did that? Oh, Larry Nance Jr. But what are you thinking here about, before we get to the big three, where are the minutes? Where's the minutes chop going to happen here with the Pellies?
I think this is the most intriguing team to take crazy tournament shots with, because we just saw what is capable of happening. My boy, Trey Murphy, I was over invested in him last slate as well, mainly because he was just a pure punt play. Now, Wes Matthews is a better straight up play. He's going to be exponentially more popular as well, but we just saw a scenario where the Pelicans decided to close a game small. I mean, Jose Alvarado played half of the fourth quarter, but then they brought back in Herbert Jones, Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, and Larry Nance played the entire fourth quarter of a do or die game here, alongside Trey Murphy, who played the entire fourth quarter of a do or die game. It was pretty remarkable stuff, pretty ballsy coaching, I think. You know, you not really going with your tried and true guys. I mean, Jonas Valanciunas, I think we're going to see some depreciated ownership on him compared to what he should be. We definitely saw a drop in salary. And if you go over to the Boom Bustle, he's the most positively leveraged play on the 4-gamer. I think that has some utility in looking at the 2-gamer and knowing that, hey, Jonas Valanciunas is going to go under-owned because you saw so many minutes for Larry Nance. But because of DeAndre Ayton on the other side and JaVale McGee, I find it less likely that they try to go small and run somebody like Zubats is not exactly DeAndre Ayton, not exactly apples and oranges. So Ayton's going to stay on the floor no matter what. I think you're looking at Jonas Valanciunas being the guy that closes a lot of these games. I think this is kind of an outlier scenario based on their matchup with the Clippers. As I look at the Phoenix Suns, I find it hard to believe that Larry Nance is going to play 24 minutes a night going forward here. But Trey Murphy is definitely somebody that could pick off minutes from Najee Marshall. Najee Marshall quietly played 10 minutes against the Clippers. If you allocate a bunch of those going towards directly Trey Murphy, who proved he can be an offensive catalyst, worked very nicely off the ball, can just basically sit in the corner and open up the lane, scoring lanes for Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. I think Trey Murphy has a lot of utility at 6% on this slate. Yes, it's an uncomfortable roster, but I think a lot of these Pelicans are just going slept on.
All right. As we move up to the main guys, we're looking at CJ McCollum here. Kind of, he's going to get his shot anytime he wants it. Brandon Ingram, ideally playing a ton of minutes, finally healthy. This is his time to really show out. And then you mentioned a little bit with Joe Val. He's the wild card. He's in that mix among those players who definitely has a 50 fantasy point ceiling. He needs a lot to go right for that to happen. And you pointed it out. There's a chance that New Orleans decides to play small because they want to get out on the break more. It's not so much that Jonas is a bad offensive player, quite to the contrary, but he does slow down the overall team. So unless they want to do, 4-on-4, 4-on-5, as he's the rebound guy, hits the outlet man, we might see him go small. So,
but then I think Phoenix would have to go small too, because this is the way that I look at it. Phoenix controls the pace of this game. Phoenix is the better team. I think in come from behind mode, you're basically going to have to match up with them. I find it very hard to believe Phoenix is going to want to go small against the Pels. Like, I find it hard to believe they're going to want to take Ayton or McGee off the floor.
And so, but you think that is going to be the requirement for the Pels to keep Joe Bell?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, Larry Nance up against Ayton doesn't exactly.
And that was a question, not a question.
Oh no, totally. It's a great talking point. No, it's just because Larry Nance would be, if he showed out, he showed exactly what he's capable of if he gets minutes and if he gets opportunity. But I mean, we haven't projected for 17 minutes here. I find that very hard to land on at 4,400 at the identical type number of a Jay Crowder, of, Mikal Bridges taking up a roster spot there. I'm more inclined to play him over the likes of like a Torrey Craig, or try to make something super punty work there. But Larry Nance is just harder for me to land on. Just thinking about the matchup, it's so different than what the Clippers did, where they just brought Covington on the floor for 35 minutes. And we talked about that constantly, where I was pretty convinced that Zubats was going to get ran off the floor against the Pels, that you put him in the pick and roll blender and you just have an opportunity for Larry Nance to kind of go wild on him. And he's not a good enough offensive player to really, on the other side of the ball, worry about him. So I think you're looking at DeAndre Ayton just being superior in pretty much every way to that. And so I find it hard to believe that Larry Nance is going to play more than that. But if he does, the fantasy point per minute rate in that last game is kind of indicative of what we saw in Portland, not the 0.86 that we see at this point in time.
All right. How are you feeling about Herbert Jones? He's kind of the breakpoint guy. He's been
kind of the darling of the boom bust tool for, I feel like, every single play-in game. He's been really somebody that I've rostered a lot more than I would expect. I'm not sure that we need to go that nuts with him here. He's a three, not even a three guy. I mean, he's a D guy. He plays defense, and that's his utility. FanDuel, always intriguing to play somebody that's that active on the defensive end, projecting him for a boatload of minutes. He's been a really nice rookie for this team and very important defensively. There's a tiny bit of positive leverage to go his direction, but he's about appropriately owned. Now he's up to 5,200 on FanDuel. I will say I like playing him a little bit more than I like playing Jackson Hayes, who I don't know what the Pelicans have in terms of utility for having Jackson Hayes on a floor here. He's been in the starting unit for so long going forward. I think that continues, but I think he is awfully trappy down at the bottom end, 3,900. But if he ends up being the guy who sees Larry Nance type minutes, gets up to 24, 26, he's a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. He definitely has massive upside there at 3,900. I just think he's going too highly owned for me to get there. 16.4%. I'd be more willing to roster Larry Nance in that scenario at 2%, just because on the off chance he gets all the second unit run and has an opportunity to show that ceiling again. Jackson Hayes, it's just kind of a little bit of a trap play for me.
All right. You feel that Jones is a bit of a steal in the fantasy market. How do you feel in the Awesemo bet of the day with Herbert Jones? 1.5 steals.
Your segues are literally the thing of legend. Like, the transition game has been strong, EMac. Jordan Klein out there, he's nodding the head. Yeah, respect.
Real, recognize real, Jordan Klein.
This is an embarrassment. That's okay. I love it.
So you going with the over 1.5? You going with the under 1.5? This is available on FanDuel, right?
On which one?
This is the free bet of the day, Herb Jones.
Oh, well, I mean, he is definitely a stock guy. I just want to go to the Awesemo bets on Twitter to double check, because again, I trust the data that we have here at Awesemo, and it's going to be the thing that I use the most in my research. Here we are, the under on 4.5 rebounds for Larry Nance at -145. And then what is the other one? What are we looking? Oh, that was from the 15th. We haven't updated it on Awesemo bets. We should probably push that, shouldn't we?
It will be shortly. This was the sneak peek. It is the over for Herb Jones.
It makes sense.
104. This was from Alex Baker. This is a good one. I like that one. Over on, and this one is not available at the moment on Underdog, but we do have 7 minutes left. So we'll turn Eric loose here on some Showdown thoughts, but I do want to bring up the DeMar DeRozan 36.5 points, rebounds, plus assists. That one is looking pretty solid here from an Awesemo standpoint. We have him checking in, doing some quick math here at about 39 points, rebounds, and assists. So while he is not going to be splashing the three-pointers, he is someone that does end up usually with half a dozen assists at the end of the game and usually in the mix for half a dozen rebounds. We know he's going to be playing 39, 40 minutes tonight. If his shot is falling, 30 points is not going to be an issue. All of a sudden, 30 plus 5, we get 40, and we only need him to get 36.5. That is one that I really like. Any Showdown tips for either of the two games tonight?
No, I think you did a good job of kind of setting that all up. For me, Giannis is by far and away the best captain spot you can possibly get to on this slate. We just know the raw fantasy points that they can show up there. It is difficult to try to find ways to get different. I think you said you had 2 of your 12 that had him. So I think you had some different paths to get on some different players. If you're going to land in terms of value, if you just group it by value, Wesley Matthews is your best value on that slate. I think he's going to be pretty popular on this Showdown slate here for Milwaukee and Chicago. but I don't really care. Him, Pat Connaughton are both guys that I'm getting to quite a bit in my lineups there. Alex Caruso is undoubtedly, I think, the best guy that actually projects to put up fantasy points in terms of value, but I'm inclined to try to find ways to get a little bit different. I don't really like the Tristan Thompson captain or a utility play, even though he's grading out decently in terms of value in our tools. I'm more inclined to go towards Wesley Matthews, Pat Connaughton, and try to make my stands with some different captains. Who did you end up captaining the most for those 12 lineups?
I think I had 4 different players in 2 each. Now I did have Giannis in all of my lineups, just 2 of them were captain,
right.
But I tried to do 2 each of the big 3 from Chicago. And then I think I ended up with 1 Middleton and 2 Drew, I think is how it ended up playing out.
Yeah. So out of the big 3, I don't know if we really even talked about which one was my favorite of the 3. I think just in terms of what their rostership is, Zach LaVine is the most popular guy in the 2-gamer. What happened? Oh, did I hear laughing? Did something just pop up randomly in my ear? Oh, that's creepy. Never mind.
I was frantically using the mouse wheel.
Oh, that's what I heard. It sounded like cackling to me. I don't know.
Well, Iron Maiden asked a question in Discord, and I hadn't been in Discord for a while, so I was well up before his question. So you answer. You finish your thought. We have 3.5 minutes left. I will finish, or I will look at the answer.
I think DeMar DeRozan is by far my favorite guy to get to in terms of the showdown. I would have a lot of him up in the captain spot. If I had more than, I'm playing 15 lineups, so I'm not playing that many more than you are. But I think DeMar DeRozan is a guy that I've gotten 4 of 15. I have 6 of my 15 with Giannis. I feel pretty comfortable with that. Might even have a little bit more here as I'm finishing my crunch up and putting the lineups in, because what would a live before lock be with me without a time crunch for the last 3 minutes to get my lineups in? But I think DeMar DeRozan pretty clearly the guy that I want to get to the most from the Bulls side.
We should have both been entering lineups. That just symbolically, because we could have just had dead air for the last 5 minutes. We could. Well, producer Cam Jordan could have come in and read us questions from the chat.
Just a lot of this.
It would be riveting. It would be riveting. All right. So getting to the question here for Iron Maiden, he is asking, which duo do you think has the higher upside? Zach LaVine and Herb Jones, or Brandon Ingram and Alex Caruso? I am going to lean towards the first one here. And the reason I'm doing that is, even though LaVine is going to be competing with the other 2 on Chicago for the shots, I think Jones is the difference maker. Ingram is probably going to be guarded by Miles Bridges, and Caruso, he's not an offensive first guy. He's going to be the 4th or 5th option whenever he's on the court. And he also is, while dealing with injury, his main aspect of being out there is his excellent perimeter defense. So that's going to be his main focus. So for me, that has me leaning towards the first duo there.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I like the first one was that Herb Jones and DeMar DeRozan. Is that what he said?
LaVine and Herb.
LaVine and Herb. Yeah, I like the LaVine and Herb a little bit more. Vooch would be 3rd in terms of the big guys for me, and then DeMar, and who was the other piece of the second one?
Now I've closed it. It was Caruso.
Oh, that's okay. I was with you. I heard them
Caruso
both, and
and
I
Ingram.
definitely went to the first one. Yeah,
Caruso and Ingram. Well, I started thinking of Peaches and Herb, and their
When I Need Peaches and Herb doesn't have the
Reunited.
same ring to it.
Reunited because it feels so good. Come on, Jordan. I know you've got Peaches and Herb on vinyl. If not, stat, get over there to Amazon Prime.
Jordan Klein is not about this Eric and Eric singing duo life. He's really not.
Oh, I forgot I'm honing in on yours. Okay.
Oh, stop it. No, you're not infringing. You're the OG, Eric. Nothing I do could possibly take away from what you've established. You began here. You started the thing. I'm just following in the footsteps.
All right. Well, we made it to the end of the show without a dad joke. How did that happen?
I don't know.
We were all
feels
about
like a
the
mistake
business today.
Yeah, we were pretty locked in. Maybe that's having to do with I'm playing 48 different slates here, and 48 different sports. I'm upset at Zach Wheeler, but other than that, everything's fine.
All right. Well, with that, we want to thank Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the show. You can find Eric out there on the Twitter sphere at Eric Linsquist. I am at EMac DFS, and of course, it is Awesemo _COM on Twitter, and check out Awesemo Bets for that free Awesemo Bet of the day. Remember, everybody, happy Easter. Some bunny loves you. Wait, did Jordan Klein just freeze?